Welcome back to Lard Island for part 3 of Infamy, the movie. And wow, what a cliffhanger we have. The Romans have really suffered a setback in their first part of this game, with the Auxilia getting hammered in the woods after unwisely sticking their noses into the Germanic forests. They really should have listened to Arminius. Where are my Auxilia? I could well be crying as I bang my head on the wardrobe. But we'll leave that to Roman emperors and not to minions such as me. Of course, this now puts the Legion in a tremendously difficult position. They're strong, they're punchy, they're aggressive, they've got the benefits of drill. But they are hugely outnumbered, and Adawolf the Spearman is still lurking somewhere in those dark forests or swampy, boggy, wet bits somewhere. And he's yet to find him. But what he does know, he's got a force of Swaby on his flank in the woods. And if they can get their act together and come for him, Nefarius Purpus, the Centurion, may well find himself caught between a rock and a hard German. So let's crack on and see what happens as we return to the action for Infamy, the movie, part 3. Right, a blue Signa flag, followed by a blue Signa flag. So barbarians are actually going to be finding that they've got a lot of options here. So another blue Signa flag, followed by a red Signa flag. Well, that's interesting, because that is a random event. 4 Signa cards of any colour on the trot signify a random event. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll 2d6 and we're going to check that excuse me, on the combat table, because this is a random event that has immediately followed combat. So that's movement. I'll look at the combat page. Any leader wounded in the combat will ignore the armour, will ignore it as his armour has saved him. So in this situation, that isn't relevant. But we can see we've got these small random events in there that can influence the game, but they're never at any point in time are they going to totally dominate it. The Romans are, however, going to pick up their Signa card and take a point of shock off these Auxilia, because they are pretty desperate to get these guys rallying down. So there's a 6 shot left on those blokes now. Leader 3, funnily enough, red leader 3 is our Julius Batavius, our auxiliary NCO, Optio. So that he's going to rock that shot down to 4, so they're no longer at a point where they're breaking, not far off it, but they're no longer at a point where they're going to have to not fight in the combat. Leader 5, blue 5. Well, that is our woodland archers. There are only 4 of them now. They could darken the sky because there's a lot of cards out, and they've got a lot of cards in their hand. I'm not going to play it because I have a cunning plan, which I'm not going to say out loud because I might hear it. That's the great thing about solo play. They've got 2 hits, so front 2 units. 1 on there, 2 is nothing, and that's a cocked dice. 5 is a point of shot. Alright. Blue 2 is Conrad Brownlegs, who is the subordinate commander, so we're not going to activate him. Red 4 is our archers. Right, well, we're going to get these archers doing stuff. Well, they can move 2d6, they go 8 inches, just chuck them up there, and they can then shoot. And still, you can move 2d6 and shoot, or you can move 3d6 with skirmishers, and they're going to shoot over their heads into those Germanic archers and miss completely. Blue leader 1. Now, this is my cunning plan. because blue leader 1 has now got a lot of Signa cards in his hand. So he can ambush from a low standing ambush point, like the one in that field, for 2 flags, but that would only allow him to bring on one of his groups. But for another flag he could bring on the second group, and another flag he could bring on the third group. So he can ambush with his entire force out of that. And because they are Germanic and very violent, they can have an aggressive attack for just 1 card. So they are going to leap forth and very easily make contact with the Legion. Let's see how they do it. Now I've got some options here, but I think what these guys really want to do, because the Legion are tough people, they're not going to hit them all, but they're going to go in on one group in a swine's head formation. So slightly move the gardening corner to make a bit of room. So by going in this formation, that is going to allow the elite group at the front to have 2 groups supporting. And we're going to put Adawolf the Spearman in the front, and Conrad Brownlegs is going to be at the back. Now, let's see how much further they get. We're going to roll the dice. Right, okay, interestingly, well, they too have got 4 points of further on each group. And remember, you're not rolling, every group in that mob counts as rolling, getting the roll on the further. You don't divide it between them, you put it in. So they've gone in and they're foaming at the mouth and getting very, very excitable. Let's work it out. So our Roman here has got 8 dice, because he's a warrior group, and he gets another 2 dice because he's drilled and fighting in the open, and he gets 3 dice for support to the rear and 3 dice for support to the flank. But he's in open order, so he doesn't have an option here of using any dice for defence. These are just all fighting dice. And he gets 3 dice for the Centurion. Now, had he thought about this, he would probably have wanted to go into close order, realising how close he was to the enemy. But he didn't. Whoever's playing him must be a bit thick, but there we go. So he doesn't. He goes in like that. And we're going to roll that, and we're going to see what the effects of that are. Okay, so the Romans have rolled. The Romans roll 3 6s and a 5. Now, let's have a look how many dice our barbarians get. So they get 10 dice because they're elite warriors. That's why they're attacking with the elite warriors at the front. So they get 10 dice. They get 3 points for support and 3 points for the other one because they've got 2 groups supporting one there. And they're making an aggressive charge. And I've run out of dice. So I'll just make a note of how many other dice using this fabulous chain of command dice. So they'll get another 2 dice for making a ferocious charge. And then they'll get another 2 dice for having 4 points of further. And then they'll get another 2 dice for making an aggressive charge. So I'll roll all of them and then I'll roll another 6. Apart from the fact they're going to get another 3 dice for Adawolf the Spearman. And he's going to do something very clever. Because he's a warlord, he has an option to shove extra dice into the fight. So he's going to do that up to 6 dice. It will mean he is more susceptible to injuries and wounds, but he's going to do it. So we're going to roll these and we're going to roll another 12 dice. So let's see what the Germans do at maximum effectiveness. So they do 2 6s and 3 5s, which isn't maximum effectiveness really. That's 4, 4 and 4. And then we roll the rest of our dice for the Germans. And the outcome is that they get 3 6s and 4 5s. Well, the 5s are pretty easy. So we can put... there's already a shock on that group. So as we've got 5, it's going to be 2, 2 and 1. So we'll put 2 shock on this group. These guys will have 2. The Roman player can place these, so he's actually going to make this group the one that gets the 1 shock, and this group the one that gets the 2 shock. So that at least keeps them all in a bit of balance. Then there are 3 armour saves to be made on the group that is in combat, no other group. So we will roll 3 dice for that, and they save 1. Now that means 2 men are dead. So we do have to roll for our Centurion, and he rolls, if he rolls a 1 it's him, because you can roll under 2, but he doesn't. So that group are now up to 4 shock and have lost 2 men. Now our Germanic chums 1-5, so we share the shock, but in this case it always has to go first of all on the group fighting, so they don't take any shock, but they take their fervour down to 3. And they've got 3 6s that they need to save against. So let's roll the dice and see how they get on there. Well, the answer is they don't. They don't save at all. So they lose 3 men. The problem they've got is that Adawolf went in balls out, I think the expression would be, which means that he adds -3 to whatever this dice roll is. Now, normally he would only be wounded on a 1 or a 2 when you've got 3 men dead, but in this situation he'll be wounded on a 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. So Adawolf, big save for a big man, fails to make it. And what damage is done? Let's roll the dice. 2. That, fortunately for him, only a 1 would see him reduced by 2 levels in status, so he is reduced by 1, which is nevertheless a significant blow. So let's have a look at that on their force morale for a status. 3 leader wounded, and they roll a 6, which sees their force morale come tumbling down to 7. Ouch, not good. And equally importantly, the group lost by 3. So one of them we know is a leader, so we take the 2 guys off, but it still counts as a loss of 3. The Romans there lost 2, so it's actually only lost by 1. So you would either side would only give way in that situation where they had more shock than men. So the fight continues again immediately, as we saw before, 2 rounds of fighting. So the barbarians, 10 dice, and they have got 6 dice for support, because they've got 2 supporting units. They've got 3 points of fervour, so they just get 1 dice for that now. It's not aggressive, it's not anything like that. And they've got Adawolf the Spearman. Now he can still, if he wants, add in up to 6 dice. But I think he's had a salutary lesson there, and he's just going to stick to his 2 dice. So we're going to roll that and see what they get. Then we'll work out the Romans. So 3 6s and 2 5s. The Romans, as we know, start off with 8 dice. However, they lose 2 because they have got 4 points of shock, so they're down to 6. They get 3 dice for rear support, 3 dice for flank support, and they have a leader with them who automatically gives them 3 dice. Now, they're going to... he could do the warlord trick, but at this moment in time, with this many dice flying about, dangerous thing to do. So let's give it a go, see what the Romans get. So 1, 2, 3, 4 6s. That's going to be a big hit. And 1, 2, shock. So for the Romans, they take 2 shock automatically. 1 has to be on the front group, so that goes up to 5. And 1 can be on one of the either groups. So we're actually going to take it off the back one. It's the player's choice. If there were 3 shock, it would have to go 1 off each. But where we have that, they do have a choice, and we're going to roll 3 dice for their armour save, which they need 4, 5 and 6, and they get it. So only 1 man has been killed, and they just take that other point of shock on there. Now that's interesting, because that is enough to tip them over with 6 points of shock and 5 men. But let's come back to them. Now for the barbarians, shock there takes their fervour down, and then they've got to make 4 armour saves. Right, they need 6s. Well, they do one of them, but that's all. So we do need to check for Adawolf again. They've got 3 kills on them. Roller. No, he saves that, but 3 warriors are dead. Key point, that brings them down to 50%. It removes all their fervour and actually puts a couple of points of shock on them. So the impetus of the barbarian attack is really going down. However, the barbarians there lost 3 men and the Romans lost 1, which means the barbarians lost by 2. So they need to withdraw 2 inches because they have 2 points of shock on that front unit. So they're going to break contact. The Romans have a choice at this point. The barbarians wouldn't have a choice at this point, but the Romans do. The barbarians would automatically follow them up 2 inches. Or if they had 4 further, they go 4 inches, or 6 further, they go 6 inches. But they don't. The Romans have the choice there to follow up 2 inches and maintain contact, or to stand still where they are. Now they're already in a situation where they've got to go back. But what's going to happen is the Optio is going to play a special rule whereby once in a game the Optio can declare that he is holding the formation in place and stopping it going back. And at that point in time, all the groups in that formation will remove shock. And I can't remember whether it's 1 or 2 points, but we'll soon find out. Okay. Well, we soon will if I can find my glasses. Right. So, when the Optio does this, and they will all rally 1 point of shock. So we can see there where they had the demand to withdraw because of excess shock. They, in this situation, are just going to stand and take it, and the shock on the other groups is actually going to be reduced as a result of the Optio holding the line. Now he can try that again during the game, but there's a big risk, and if it goes wrong, their morale doesn't go down, the shock doesn't go down, it goes up, and that is not what they want. So the Romans have bounced that ambush. However, they do have 2 cards, Signa cards, and they're going to use that to perform a point of drill. What's going to happen is the group at the rear is going to fill ranks with the group at the front. So they take people from their group and they move them forward. The only thing that limitation they have on that is that they must keep more people there than they have points of shock, but they've only got 1 point of shock because they're at the back. And the other advantage is they've got 5 guys there now with 50% strength. They can still, over 50% strength, they can still operate as a supporting group. So they are maximising their fighting capability by doing that. And in fact, what the Romans are going to do, they're going to play the last card, Signa card, in their hand, and they're going to drop the shock on that group down another point, because they really want to get them in as good fighting formation as possible. In fact, if the Romans can now play a nimble game, get some of that shock off and chuck themselves in, they potentially can break the will of the barbarian commander. What we need to do before we forget is we need to roll up the force morale for the barbarians being pushed back in battle, and this is an elite group being pushed back, and so that means they lose another one off their force morale, so they're down to 6. So the barbarians are getting a bit of punch on the nose. Optio, great, the perfect card for the Romans. The Optio is at the rear of that formation and he can rally shock off any group within that. So the first thing he does is bring that right down to 2. So we can now see there's only 4 points of shock and there's all those groups, 2, 1 and 1, and they've got the fighting guys at the front. This is what we're talking about with Roman drill, coming in and doing things that the barbarians can't respond to, so the barbarians need to win in other ways. That's a blue flag. We're going right to the end here. So there we go. Leader 4 is the slingers. Now the slingers are stood at the back in the way. So what they're going to do is they're going to move 3d6 and get themselves right over here. So they're not going to be able to chuck any missiles, but they are redeploying, so they're right out the way, and they can, they hope, get their rocks off in the direction of the Legion. So the question is, what's going to happen here? We've had two really tough fights there, but the Romans really held the line there by the skin of their teeth, with the Optio being obliged to get his staff out and hold the formation in position, and the barbarians have been pushed off as a result, with their elite warriors absolutely in rags. Well, they started off in rags, quite frankly. They're not the snappiest dressed chaps, but there we go. Let's start the next turn. Right, a blue Signa, a blue Signa, a blue Signa. Who shuffled these? Another blue Signa. Blimey, it's a random event. Now, the last thing to happen was the movement of the skirmishers. So we'll roll 2d6 on there, and we'll have a look at the random event for the skirmishers, if I can find it. Here we go. And we rolled 7. All the this group or groups immediately move 2d6 towards the nearest enemy. Well, they're going to stop at 4 inches, but there we go. So they're getting up close and personal. And more to the point, the barbarians have got a lot of flags in play, and they've got another one in play, and a Roman one. Well, the Romans will pick that up immediately and use that to take another pointer further off, so that goes into our discard pile. And another one. Well, they're going to hold on to that. Leader 2, that's the Optio. He's going to take the remaining 2 points of shock off the front 2 groups. So there's only 1 point of shock on that formation now. They could take it off with this Signa card that's in play, but they don't want to, because they are hoping to be able to do something a bit more aggressive. Next card out is Leader 4, which is the Slingers. Well, they are definitely going to use 2 of these cards to darken the sky. The Romans daren't put their shields up at this point in time to defend themselves, because if the barbarians hit them while they've still got shields up, they are completely in the wrong tactical stance in close combat. So it's key what stance your troops are in. So let's roll a 6 dice for those barbarians, and they're hitting on 4s. 1, 3, 3, 3, 3, 6. 1 hit. And it kills a man. Wow. Things like that might just be enough. Tempus Fugit. Now, the barbarians have got 3 flags, 3 Signa cards in play. Must stop calling them flags, that's sharp practice. It's a different game. The barbarians have got 3 Signa cards in play. So what are they going to activate? Well, they're certainly going to activate over here. And we're going to see those guys move through the woods. Now, we can't do any rallying at this point in time, because these are not leaders being activated. So they're actually carrying quite a bit of shock. And they would be moving through pretty horrible terrain. So in controlled order, moving in that formation, they would be removing the higher dice rolled, and in that wood they're simply not going to achieve anything. So I can't see them. There's no point in activating them. It's a complete waste of time. So what the barbarian player is going to do is he can't interpenetrate. The problem he's got is he's got a unit of elite warriors at the front there, and he's got 2 units behind it of ordinary warriors who are kind of in a position they'd like to get going in, but they've really got to reorganise their ranks before they do that, and it's going to take a leader to do that. So the only people who haven't really activated are the archers at the back, and they are not archers who like operating in the open. They only like operating in cover, and in fact if they go out in the open and they activate, they'll take a point of shock to reflect their brittle morale in that situation. So they're not going to activate. So the issue for the Romans is who is going to activate? Well, the Legion could charge in. In fact, the Legion are going to charge in. I don't really know. I'm hesitating and thinking about it. It would be nice for the Legion to have, a ferocious, aggressive attack and all that, but they're not going to get it in this situation. So they easily pile in there, and they are arranged in such a manner that they can have 2 groups fighting against one, with 1 group operating in support. So it's a no-brainer, as the man said, which is handy for me. So the barbarians are going to be fighting. They've got 5 dice because they're elite, but they're at half strength. They lose 1 due to the shock, 2 points of shock. They get 3, 6 for supports, and Adawolf adds another 2. So we're going to roll that and see what they get. The Romans are all out there in open order, so they're really charging them around, hitting them hard. But the barbarians, interestingly, don't kill anybody, but they do a lot of shock. 6 points of shock. Well, we might as well apply that now because there's no saving rolls to be done. So that, as we know, we split between all the groups who were involved in the fight, either fighting or supporting. So we got 2 on them. We got 2 on them. And we put 2 on there. And no kills, so no saving rolls. Now, for the Romans, we get 8 dice because they're warriors. And we get another 2 dice because they're drilled and fighting in the open. And then we replicate that again because they've got 2 groups doing it. So another 8, 10 dice. We've got 3 groups supporting to the rear. So we'll make a note of how many extra dice we're going to roll here. So we've got 3 supporting to the rear, and we've got another 3 for their leader. And those shot weren't on there prior to now, so it doesn't matter which order we activate in, it's what they started the melee with, not what they've got. So let's roll that and see where we get. Well, this is a lot more bloodthirsty for the Romans. In fact, they've got 4 6s and they've got 4 5s, and then we'll roll another 6 dice, which actually only adds another 2 5s. However, at this point in time, it's the 5s that are potentially going to do a lot of damage because it's going to be reducing the fervour on those supporting units, which for the Romans is absolutely key. So we've got 6 points of shock or negative fervour, if you like. So the front group goes up to 4 points of shock, and then the supporting groups, their fervour is reduced to 2. Then they get 4 saves from the 6s, and this is all on the front group, and they need 6s to save. They save 1, but they lose 3, so that means they get 3 points of shock. So they're up to 7. And the big question, the burning question of the moment, is Adawolf clocked over the head with a kettle? Let's roll to find out. So that 3 dead, a 1 or 2, Adawolf gets it. He rolls a 3, he's safe, which is fabulous for him, but not so fabulous for the blokes who are left on the unit, and they will break. Now, what do? If there was room 4 inches behind them, they'd flow round the group who was there, but they don't, they just go straight through the middle. Effectively, what we're going to do is take them off the table because there's so few of them left, and they've got so much shock, and they're so far away from the action, they're not going to be playing any part in it. The important thing for Adawolf is he can just simply walk away from them and go, I never really liked them very much anyway, I'll join you chaps. So that's what he does now. And we do have to test for a group that has broken, which is on here. And there we go, and that's elite. That's 3 points of the force morale, 1, 2, 3. So they're down to 3, that's not good. Now, they ran back through those 2 other groups, which is not good. You take 2 points of shock when people run through you. So all their fervour is removed. For the Romans, that is absolutely key, because without fervour, the barbarian edge is gone. And what the Romans are able to do now is follow up 2 inches if they wish, or stand still. Well, 2 inches won't get them in contact, but it will be a statement of, we're right in your face, matey, and we're coming to get you. And so that is what they are going to do. Because as we know, they're pretty confident that old Ecbert the Swaby is stuck in the woods and his men milling about because they've got so much shock on them. And the situation there is quite dire for the Germans. The Legion have really got their act together on this one, and we can see that their armour and their drill and their training is a big differentiator between them and the barbarians, whose real key weapon is building up that fervour and hitting hard. I think realistically in that situation, rather than going in a swine set, the Germans would have been better hitting with two groups up front, because what's happened is that by focusing all at one point, they've actually allowed that Roman group fighting to get support to the flank and the rear. So completely wrong choice there, and that's entirely down to him, not me. Right, so we'll have a shuffle and we'll crack on. Right, a Signa, blue Signa and a red Signa. Right, the Romans will instantly pick that one up and take some shock off one of their front groups. So that's in the discard pile. Ooh, nice one for the Romans. Optio. So the Optio here at the back can take 2 points of shock off. So he's going to take one off that front group that's just lost one and take the other one down to 2. So that's down to 1 from 2. So the Romans once again quite nimbly removing this shock. So the other thing that I should have done at the end of that turn when they advanced is that would have obliged the slingers, who were within 4, to withdraw and flee away from them. So they would flee back in there. But they're activated now. But they can't throw rocks at that group because they're within 2 inches of a friendly group. So the Romans following up and keeping in their face very much favoured them. So they're going to start chucking things over here at these archers. They can't darken the sky. They have got one signal in play, but it's not enough. They did 2 hits on the archers, who are lightly armoured, but they do make 1 save on a 6, so they only lose 1 guy. Right, blue Signa, Tempus Fugit. That's monstrously bad luck for the Germans, because they've got 2 groups there who are ready to go in and can very easily do so because it's a formed mob, but they've got no fervour, and to go in against the Legion with no fervour when you're just warriors is just suicidal. So they are going to turn round and bugger off in an uncontrolled manner. Now, by uncontrolled, what I mean is this: the barbarian leader can have 2 groups and he can keep them together on a tight rein by rolling 2d6 and only allowing them to move 1 dice. But if he wants them to move faster, he can let them go uncontrolled. And in that case, you roll for the distance moved for each group. And you do that before they move, and you can then put them in the most advantageous position you want. So one group's rolled 6, which is rubbish, and the other group has rolled 6, which is also rubbish. Because they end their turn facing away from the enemy. So we'll send them back over here. They really are attempting now at this point in time to get a bit of clear blue water between them and the Romans, so that they can start reforming up for an attack. But things are not looking good for the Germans, it has to be said. They are struggling in this particular game. Largely because the Legion have been playing it all right. Okay, so that's the first card used. There are no Signas out for the Romans because they've used them. So the barbarians have got a second Signa card that they can use. And I think, being realistic, they're just going to get the archers to do their stuff. So they get 2 hits. So 1 and 1, no effect, because they're not reducing armour like the slings does. So roll, have a quick shuffle and see where we get to. Cut the deck. Red leader 4. Now that is our auxiliary leader here. Now, sorry, Adawolf should have cleared off with his mates. They're going to roll 2d6. They roll 6, and then they are going to shoot. The good thing about these auxiliary archers is they are auxiliary archers with benefits. They can fight in a close combat. So, and they can force those slingers to evade. One of the things that you need to do as a Roman player is push up against those skirmishers who are trying to harass you and force them to go away and create some space for yourself. So they're going to move up and they're going to roll 7 dice because one of them's dead, and they get 4 hits on the slingers. Now slingers, bare and naked as they are, won't like that. So no armour. 5 and 6s are killed, so that's 1, 6, and 2, 3 and 4. So 1 dead and 3 points of shock on those slingers, which is a nasty result, because remember that the supernumerary leader, the supernumerarum, cannot rally shock unless he's burning cards to do so, and that's not a good thing, because 2 of the Signa cards have come out of the deck already because the Germans the German force morale has fallen down to 3. Adawolf, right, well, he's quite pleased with that. What he's going to do is he's going to get those guys moving, and he's going to, first one rolls 8, second one rolls 6, but the important thing is that they are getting away from those Romans. The important thing for the Romans is that they are exposing the field. So we'll get them over there. There's Adawolf, there's Conrad, and they are moving off to try and reform. We'll put that ambush point back on there, and we've got a blue Signa out, another blue Signa out, a card the wrong way up, all the cards the wrong way up, put them the right way up, another blue Signa out, and a red Signa. So that's a random event, and that's going to be based on movement. So let us see what happens on a random event based on movement. Well, that's a wacky old roll, 11. If warriors, they can make an immediate 2d6 bonus move in any direction but cannot contact the enemy. Well, that really suits them, and in fact they are going to move off in this general direction. So these guys are going 7, and turning to face the direction of travel, and these guys here, they're going to go 10, so let's see where they can get to. So turning to face the direction of travel, but making sure those Romans are not on their flank. So the barbarians are swirling round, I guess looking to team up with our Swabian mate to see if they can't come back. So that's another Signa card. Well, the Romans have got 2 Signa in play. Now I've got some options here, lots of options with Signa. We've still got some residual shock on the legionaries, but I'm not worried about that, there's not a lot. We've got quite a bit of residual shock on these auxiliaries, and I am more worried about that. So they're going to bring that down to 3 using one of those Signa cards, because they're looking shaky, but the more we can get off them the better. Blue leader 3, that's our Swabian friend. Now really important for him, he's got 3 Signa in play. He's a status 2 leader. These can bump it up to 5, meaning he can take off 5 points of shock, which has largely rallied off all the shock on those groups. There's only 1 point of shock left, and that is going to help him being able to extricate himself from the wacky wild woods next time he's activated. So a red Signa card out, red leader 3. Well, that's a good one, because that's our auxiliary leader there. He can take that shot down to 1, and he's actually going to pick up one of those Signa and use it and get rid of all the shock on those auxiliaries. They're only half a unit, but in a game that's flowing like this, having somebody able to protect a flank could well be what you need. Blue Signa, red Signa, interesting. Red leader 1, that is our main man. Well, he's going to take off all 3 points of shock, which are his 3 command initiatives. And then he's going to pick up that 1 to give himself another command initiative, and the Legion are going to move 9 inches. Now they're going to come within, well, they're going to come into contact with an enemy ambush point, but the If they're there at the end of the turn, they'll remove it from play. But there's no benefits to doing that. There are simply so many of these. They're just simply points of threat. So he's doing that, and the horse and cart moves 10, which is a rather spiffing result for them, because they're going for the fields, which is one of the areas that they can forage from. So good result there for the Romans in terms of the run of the cards. Another Signa card out, so the Romans have still got 2 out. Interesting, because what they're going to do is they're going to use that to throw pilum. They're going to throw their pilum, the pillar, at those guys there, because while they've got the Germans on the back foot, they want to continue doing it. So we've got 2 groups of 8, so they will roll 8 dice in total, and they get 4 hits. Now the other group are out of range, but even so they're adjacent to them, so we've got 2 hits on them, which is a point of shock. The key thing here is by putting shock on this group, you are stopping them getting further. And the group at the back, they take a dead and a point of shock. And as long as the Romans can keep that further off the Germans, they're in a strong position to stop them attacking them. So it's a case of attempting to keep that pressure on. Leader 5 blue. Now leader 5 blue is the archers. And they're going to roll their dice. They've got 1 hit. And actually, because they're shooting the legion in the rear, they reduce their armour. So we're going to see a point of shock go on those guys. The Romans are going to have to do something about those people, but I think they know that. I don't need to tell them. Blue leader 2. Now, blue leader 2 is Conrad Brownlegs. This group is able to take. They're immediately adjacent to each other, and they are in a mob, so I'm allowed to take off both those points of shock. Red Signa come out. Red leader 2 is the Optio, who's going to take that and take that off. There's barely any cards left, so the Romans are going to take that card and throw their other pillar while they've got the opportunity to do so. What I am going to do is put that little number 2 on this unit at the back, because they haven't used theirs because they're out of range. They've only got a 6-inch range. So that's 8 dice, and if they can keep up the pressure, just 2 hits. So 1 on that group is shock, and 1 on that group is nothing. Oh no, it is actually, because they're in light armour. So putting back that shock and keeping the pressure on those guys. One of these is going to be Tempest Fugitive, but it's not that one. That's leader 4, which is our slingers. Right, there's a 5 of them with 2 points of shock, so that's just 4 dice. So they do 1 hit, and because the enemy within 6 inches, they have to target them, and that is a point of shock. Okay, and the next card out will be the Tempest Fugitive card. We know it because there's only 1 left. Interesting, interesting. Right, well, after a huge initial German success over here with the Swaby, they've clearly found some gin in the woods or something like that, and they're hanging around having a bit of a party time. But Egbert is just getting them in order, and we'll see if they can actually do anything. Red Signa, blue 4. That's our woodland folk who do 1 hit and they don't do any damage. And Tempest Fugitive. Wow. That was a very short turn, but the Romans have got a Signa card. So they can activate 1 group formation to do what they like. And as they are lined up, they are going to go piling into the flanks of those Germans. Or at least they would have done had they rolled more than 5. No, 5's enough. Right, 5 is enough, and they hit them fairly and squarely in the flank. We can also take off that ambush point because they ended the turn at that point. And in we go. At this point, there's probably no point in actually doing this, but the Romans are going to have a field day. Those 2 groups that were connected have just moved slightly apart to indicate, because when you're hitting a flank, any mob or formation is broken up. So the only people fighting are going to be those guys in that group. Now, They get 8 dice because they're warriors, not elite warriors, and then they get another 2 dice for Adawolf, but that's halved because they've been hitting the flanks, so they get 5 dice. So we'll use our 5 dice, and they do, interestingly, 6 and 3 5s. The Romans, on the other hand, get 8 dice for each group of warriors, and then they get another 2 dice because they're drilled and in the open, so that'll be another 4 dice, and then they get 3 for support, so that'll be another, I'll take it up to 7, and then they get their main man, so that'll take it up to 10. So the Romans are going to have a lot more dice, so we'll roll these and then we'll roll 10 dice and we'll see what the effect is. And the effect is not as impressive as the Romans would have hoped so far. And then we roll another 5, 10 dice, and we see that that improves things somewhat. So the barbarians immediately take 5 points of shock for the 5 5s, so that will put them up to 6 shock. And then they roll for the 2 armour saves, which they fail. Not necessarily miserably, but they certainly fail it. Let's roll for Adawolf. No. So they will lose 2 men dead, and that will increase their shock up to 8. 8 shock and 8 men, which is key. Now we roll for the Romans. Because they are Romans in formation, they're going to share the shock, so that's 1 point of shock on each group. So 1, 1 and 1, which in view of what they're dishing out to their opponent is pretty negligible. The worst thing for the Germans here is that they are not going to have enough shock to make them pull off, so they're going to have to fight a second round in the flank. If they won the first round of combat, they would turn to face, and then you'd fight the second round immediately on level playing field terms, both fighting to the front. But they've lost the first round of combat, so they fight a second round on the flank. If they survive that, they'll turn to face. What's the odds? I mean, almost none. So the Romans now roll the dice for their armour and they save it. So the Romans really come out of that smelling of roses. The barbarians, they get 8 dice. However, they've got 8 shocks, so they take 4 off. They get 2 for the leader and then they halve it, so they get 3 dice. So this is not good for the Germans, and they do a sum total of nothing. The Romans, on the other hand, get 10 dice. So 3, 6, 8, 10. And then 10 dice, 6, 10, then they get 3 for supports, and then they lose nothing for shock, and they get 3 for the Centurion, so they're up to 6, another 6 dice. Right, so we'll roll these. So as we can see, the combat mechanism is nice and simple, really is easy. What makes the difference is how you apply it in terms of number of men, the amount of shock. So that's, especially hitting in the flank, you know, this shock can't be dispersed. So that's 2 points of shock automatically. So that goes up to 4. And then they've got 3 6s. So let's roll 3 dice, see if they can get any saves. Well, unsurprisingly, no. Let's roll for Adawolf. Adawolf's hit. So 2 men go, another 3 points of shock. They think it's all over. So there's a lot of shock. 13 points of shock on 7 men, including Adawolf. But what happens to Adawolf? He's rolled a 6, so he is wounded again, which means he's down to a status 1. So let's roll for a force morale on the leader of that status being wounded. Is a 1 point off force morale, so they go down to 2, and then this group are not broken, but they are pushed back. Because there's a room, they will go around them, but they are retreating completely off the table because the amount of shock that is there. So we'll roll for them being pushed back in combat, and warrior group pushback on a 6, -2. It's all over completely. The German force morale has gone. So, tough fight. Interestingly, the Roman legion lost 3 figures. The auxiliary archers lost 1 figure, whereas the Batavian Auxilia lost 12 figures. They really took a pounding in that first fight. And at that point in time, I thought, this is really, really going to be difficult for the Romans. How on earth can they pull that out of the bag with the Suebi right on the flank and the Auxilia completely in disorder and milling around here like a bunch of idiots, and the legionaries having to push on. But the worst thing Adawolf did was come out ambushing and hitting those Romans head on. I got the formation wrong there. He should have gone in differently. Had he gone in differently, it would have forced the Romans to make a lot more decisions. So that's the 2 groups at the front with the one behind. That one group would have had to decide where it was supporting. And yes, the Romans would have had a good chance in that part of the fight. But in the other part of the fight, a lot closer. A lot closer. And that could have tipped the balance. As it was, the barbarians lost purely on their force morale, really. The effect of being beaten in combat and pushed back in combat just completely sapped away at their morale, and they were not able to pull things together. Now, that's a first run through. We're going to be filming other run throughs and showing how it plays. I think the great thing about the rules is that every game will play very, very differently. So it's got that replayability, especially the way that you use your cards. The options that gives you means that you've got lots of choices to make in play. But as we can see, it's the system is simple in terms of dice. So rolling to hit with missiles at whatever the range is, 5s and 6s. And then it's just simply a save based on armour. Close combat, again, it's 5s and 6s. 5s do shock and 6s do shock and kill, and then saves based on armour. So there's a continuity through it that makes that very easy. The thing that makes you think is what you're going to do with these, how you play these, when you play them, what you use them on, what you use them to do. And that is something that I hope is constantly challenging and interesting. Phew, what a scorcher. That certainly was not the outcome that I had anticipated at the top end of this programme. I really did think that the Romans were in a difficult position, and just one tactical error made by the German leader, not me at all, in coming out in the wrong format and shape and trying to really hit hard at one point, actually allowed the Romans to focus all their support on defending that point. He caught them in the wrong tactical shape. Really, the Germans should have been in close order with shields braced to receive that, but Arminius did all the right things apart from attacking in that swine's head, which in some situations is so helpful and important, but in this situation left him very much with the Romans able to concentrate their efforts on avoiding that. But nevertheless, I think we saw from that video that we've got a system there where the combat system is nice and easy. I tried to run through that with you, but if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask questions and put them below. That very much was a game of ambushing. We didn't see an awful lot of movement there. I really wanted to focus this game, to be honest with you, on explaining some of the core mechanisms. And in the next game, we're going to be looking at Caesar's Romans invading Britain in 54 or 55 BC, I'm not sure which yet, but in that game we should be seeing a lot more fluidity and movement to that, so it will give us an opportunity to examine some of the other things in the game, trying not to overload with information at any point. So big game of ambushes. Let's see what happens in the next one. We'll I'm sure we'll have some ambushes, but equally so I'm sure we'll be able to have a look at some of the other mechanisms. Hopefully you enjoyed that. It's going to take us a couple of days because we have got Virtual Lard tomorrow, which is going to be a busy day, and undoubtedly the following day I'm going to have a blooming headache. after the virtual pub. So we will get filming in the next few days and get that one up as quickly as possible. What is certain is it will be up well before release. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thumbs up and all that. So see you soon.